You know how sometimes you look back at your life and realize you were living in a carefully constructed lie? That's what happened to me. Except I didn't just wake up one day and figure it out. No, it took my husband dying for me to discover that everything, and I mean everything, I thought I knew about my marriage, my finances, and my future was a complete fabrication. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, because the details matter. They always matter, even when you wish they didn't. My husband Bob went to the bank every Tuesday at exactly 2:00 p.m. For 38 years of marriage minus 38 years, rain or shine, sick or healthy, he never missed it. Not once. I can still see him checking his watch on Tuesday mornings, that little ritual he had where he'd pat his pocket to make sure he had his wallet and keys. It was as much a part of our routine as morning coffee or the evening news. When I asked him why he was so religious about it, he just kissed my forehead. Always my forehead, never my lips. Isn't that strange how you remember these details afterward? And say the same thing every single time. Just keeping our future secure, Maggie, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Bob was an accountant. Numbers were his language. Organization was his religion. Our bills were always paid on time, sometimes even early. Our taxes were filed in February when everyone else was scrambling in April. Our retirement accounts, he assured me with that confident smile of his, were solid as a rock. We were set for life, he'd say. We could travel when we retired, maybe get that little cabin in the mountains we'd always talked about. Everything was taken care of. I worked part-time as a librarian after the kids were grown, just to keep busy and stay social. It wasn't about the money. Bob always said we didn't need my income, that it was just fun money for me to spend however I wanted. I retired 3 years ago when I turned 64, looking forward to those golden years everyone talks about. Grandchildren, travel, morning walks without rushing, the quiet satisfaction of a life well lived. Bob was going to retire the following year, and we had plans, so many plans. We were going to drive across the country, see all those national parks we'd only read about. We were going to take that Alaskan cruise. We were going to finally learn how to golf together, even though neither of us had any real interest in it. It just seemed like the thing retired couples did. The day Bob died, I was at the grocery store picking out avocados. Isn't that absurd? My entire world was about to collapse, and I was standing there squeezing avocados to see which ones were ripe enough for that week's salads. I remember I had 4 of them in my hand when my phone rang. David, my son, was calling, and something in the way my phone vibrated felt wrong. You know how sometimes you just know something bad is coming? It was 2:47 p.m. on a Thursday. I remember looking at the time on my phone before I answered, thinking that Bob would be back from his errands soon and we could have an early dinner. Mom, David's voice hit me like cold water. It was flat, careful, like he was afraid the words themselves might shatter me into pieces. Mom, you need to come to the hospital. Dad collapsed at work. I dropped the avocados, just let them fall right there on the grocery store floor. One of them split open, and I watched the green flesh spread across the linoleum while David kept talking, telling me which hospital, telling me to drive carefully, telling me things were serious. I don't remember driving there. I must have, because my car was in the hospital parking lot afterward, but that entire journey is just gone from my memory, like someone took an eraser to that part of my life. By the time I got there, Bob was already gone. Massive heart attack, the doctor said. He was a young doctor, couldn't have been more than 35, with kind eyes that had probably delivered this news too many times before. He probably didn't feel much, the doctor told me. Quick, clean, the way Bob would have wanted it if he'd had a choice. I remember thinking that was a strange thing to say because who wants to die at 66 with retirement just a year away? But I nodded anyway because that's what you do. You nod, you accept, you sign papers, you make phone calls, you move through it all like you're underwater, everything muffled and slow and not quite real. I didn't cry at the funeral. Everyone assumed I was in shock, that the grief hadn't hit me yet. I saw them watching me, waiting for me to break down. My sister Patricia kept touching my shoulder, asking if I was okay, telling me it was all right to cry. But the truth was simpler and so much stranger. I felt relief, not because I hated him. I didn't. Bob wasn't a bad man, not in the traditional sense. He didn't hit me. He didn't cheat on me, at least not that I knew of. He was present for the kids' childhoods, showed up at soccer games and piano recitals, helped with homework. We had dinner together almost every night. We said, "I love you," before bed. From the outside, we looked like the poster couple for a long, stable marriage. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the shock and the exhaustion and the endless stream of casseroles, people kept bringing over. Why do people always bring casseroles to funerals? I felt like I could finally breathe. There was this tightness in my chest that I'd been living with for so long I'd forgotten it was there, and suddenly it was loosening. I just didn't know why yet. I thought maybe it was just the relief that comes when someone who's been sick finally passes, even though Bob hadn't been sick. Or maybe it was the end of caretaking, except I hadn't really been caretaking. I couldn't name it, this feeling, and that bothered me more than Bob's death did, which made me feel like a terrible person. 3 days after the funeral, while I was sitting at the kitchen table going through sympathy cards and trying to figure out which ones required a personal response versus a generic thank you note, a letter arrived. Plain white envelope, no return address, my name typed on the front in that impersonal computer font that could mean anything. I almost threw it away, thinking it was junk mail, but something made me open it. Inside was a single sheet of paper on letterhead from First National Bank, the bank where Bob did all our banking, where he went every Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. Dear Mrs. Thompson, it read, "We wish to express our condolences regarding your husband's passing. Per the terms of the safe deposit box lease, we must inform you that you are listed as the secondary holder. The box has been paid through the end of the year. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to arrange access." I read it 3 times, then I read it again. We had a safe deposit box. Bob had a safe deposit box, and he had never mentioned it, not once in 38 years of marriage. I sat there holding that letter, and I could feel something shifting inside me, like tectonic plates moving beneath the surface of my understanding. What was in that box? Why hadn't he told me about it? We didn't have valuable jewelry. My engagement ring was modest, my wedding band simple. We didn't have stock certificates or savings bonds or any of those physical documents people used to keep in safe places. Everything was digital now, so what was Bob hiding in a safe deposit box at First National Bank? I called the bank that afternoon. My hand was shaking as I dialed, which seemed ridiculous. It was just a box. Maybe he'd put our birth certificates in there, our marriage license, the kids' social security cards. Normal things, organized things. That would be just like Bob, keeping everything neat and secure. The woman on the phone was polite, professional, her voice so smooth it could have been recorded. Yes, the box was registered to Robert Thompson with Margaret Thompson as co-holder. Yes, I could access it any time. Would Thursday at 10:00 a.m. work? Thursday, 2 days away. I said yes and hung up, then sat there staring at the phone like it might tell me what to do next. I spent those 2 days moving through the house like a ghost, opening drawers Bob had organized, looking at files he'd labeled in his precise accountant's handwriting. Everything seemed normal, too normal, like a stage set designed to look exactly like a life. Bills paid, taxes filed, bank statements that showed regular deposits and reasonable withdrawals. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious, nothing that would explain why my heart was beating so fast or why I kept waking up at 3:00 a.m. with a sense of dread I couldn't name. David came by on Wednesday evening. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his eyes rimmed with red. He'd taken his father's death hard, harder than Emily, my daughter, who'd cried at the funeral but seemed almost eerily composed afterward. David had always been closer to Bob. They'd had that father-son bond that everyone said was so important. Sports, fishing trips, long talks about careers and life choices. Bob had been so proud when David became a lawyer, had bragged about it to anyone who would listen. "Mom," David said, settling into the kitchen chair where Bob used to sit. I noticed he didn't sit in his father's usual spot, but in the one next to it, and I wondered if that was deliberate. "We need to talk about Dad's finances." My stomach dropped, just fell right through the floor. What kind of things? He pulled out a folder from his briefcase, the kind of accordion folder lawyers always seem to have. Inside were bank statements, investment reports, documents I'd never seen before. "Did you know Dad had 3 different checking accounts?" 3? I shook my head. "No, we only have the joint account, the one at First National." "Had, Mom." Past tense. He spread the papers out on the table between us. "This account," he pointed to one statement, "has been empty for 6 months. This one closed last year, and this one," he tapped a third statement, "has a balance of $43. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of the table. That's not possible. Our retirement account alone should have over $400,000. David's face told me everything before his words did. It was the face of someone who has to deliver bad news to a person they love, and they're trying to find a kind way to do it, but there is no kind way. "Mom, I can't find it. Any of it." That night I didn't sleep. I lay in the bed Bob and I had shared for decades, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through memories like someone fast-forwarding through a movie looking for clues they missed the first time. The Tuesday bank trips, his insistence on handling all the finances, the way he'd pat my hand and say, "Don't worry about the boring money stuff, Maggie. I've got it covered." The way he'd get defensive if I asked too many questions, not angry exactly, but tight, controlled. "You don't trust me," he'd say, and I'd always back down because of course I trusted him. He was my husband. He was an accountant. If you couldn't trust an accountant with money, who could you trust? He'd had it covered, all right, covered up, buried, hidden, and now I was going to find out what. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of November day that promises rain but hasn't quite delivered yet. I dressed carefully, choosing a navy blazer and slacks instead of the morning clothes I'd been wearing. This felt like armor, not grief. David had offered to come with me, but I said no. Whatever was in that box, I needed to see it first. Alone. This was between me and Bob now, or what was left of him. The bank was a modern building, all glass and steel, trying too hard to look trustworthy and secure. The manager, a woman in her 50s named Beatrice, same name as my sister, which felt like some kind of cosmic joke, met me at the entrance. Her smile was sympathetic, professional, the smile of someone who'd practiced it in a mirror. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your husband was a valued client for many years." A valued client. I wondered what that meant. How many Tuesday visits did it take to become valued? She led me down a hallway to the vault, her heels clicking on the polished floor in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. The safe deposit boxes lined the walls like metal teeth in some great mechanical mouth. She used 2 keys, hers and the one she'd given me, to open box 847. The number meant nothing to me. Had Bob chosen it? Was it random? Did it matter? "I'll give you privacy," Beatrice said, gesturing to a small room with a table and chair. The room was windowless, painted that institutional beige that's supposed to be calming, but just feels suffocating. The box was heavier than I expected. I carried it to the table, set it down, and for a long moment just stared at it. Plain metal, locked secrets. The summary of a marriage I thought I understood. My hands were trembling. I could hear my own breathing in that small room, too loud, too fast. I thought about not opening it. I thought about putting it back, walking out, maintaining the illusion for just a little longer. But that was the old Maggie, the one who didn't ask questions, who trusted blindly, who accepted "don't worry about it" as an answer. I opened it. Had Mom. Past tense. He spread the papers out on the table between us. This account, he pointed to one statement, has been empty for 6 months. This one closed last year. And this one, he tapped a third statement, has a balance of $43. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of the table. That's not possible. Our retirement account alone should have over $400,000. David's face told me everything before his words did. It was the face of someone who has to deliver bad news to a person they love, and they're trying to find a kind way to do it. But there is no kind way. Mom, I can't find it. Any of it. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in the bed Bob and I had shared for decades, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through memories like someone fast-forwarding through a movie looking for clues they missed the first time. The Tuesday bank trips, his insistence on handling all the finances, the way he'd pat my hand and say, "Don't worry about the boring money stuff, Maggie, I've got it covered." The way he'd get defensive if I asked too many questions, not angry exactly, but tight, controlled. "You don't trust me," he'd say, and I'd always back down because of course I trusted him. He was my husband. He was an accountant. If you couldn't trust an accountant with money, who could you trust? He'd had it covered all right, covered up, buried, hidden, and now I was going to find out what. Thursday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of November day that promises rain, but hasn't quite delivered yet. I dressed carefully, choosing a navy blazer and slacks instead of the morning clothes I'd been wearing. This felt like armor, not grief. David had offered to come with me, but I said no. Whatever was in that box, I needed to see it first. Alone. This was between me and Bob now, or what was left of him. The bank was a modern building, all glass and steel, trying too hard to look trustworthy and secure. The manager, a woman in her 50s named Beatrice, same name as my sister, which felt like some kind of cosmic joke, met me at the entrance. Her smile was sympathetic, professional, the smile of someone who'd practiced it in a mirror. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your husband was a valued client for many years." A valued client. I wondered what that meant. How many Tuesday visits did it take to become valued? She led me down a hallway to the vault, her heels clicking on the polished floor in a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. The safe deposit boxes lined the walls like metal teeth in some great mechanical mouth. She used 2 keys, hers and the one she'd given me, to open box 847. The number meant nothing to me. Had Bob chosen it? Was it random? Did it matter? "I'll give you privacy," Beatrice said, gesturing to a small room with a table and chair. The room was windowless, painted that institutional beige that's supposed to be calming, but just feels suffocating. The box was heavier than I expected. I carried it to the table, set it down, and for a long moment just stared at it. Plain metal, locked secrets. The summary of a marriage I thought I understood. My hands were trembling. I could hear my own breathing in that small room, too loud, too fast. I thought about not opening it. I thought about putting it back, walking out, maintaining the illusion for just a little longer. But that was the old Maggie, the one who didn't ask questions, who trusted blindly, who accepted "don't worry about it" as an answer. I opened it. Inside were folders, so many folders. The first one I pulled out was labeled Investments, Actual, in Bob's neat handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Page after page of losses, bad investments, failed stocks, risky ventures that had tanked, hundreds of thousands of dollars gone. But these weren't accounts I recognized. These had Bob's name on them. Only his name. Dates going back 5 years. 5 years of him losing our money while telling me everything was fine. The second folder was worse. Home equity loans. 3 of them, taken out against our house, our home, the place where I'd raised my children and planted roses and painted the kitchen 3 different colors over the years because I could never quite decide what I wanted. Total debt, $270,000. I couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, the walls pressing in. How do you take out $270,000 in loans against a house without your wife knowing? How do you forge her signature? Because that's what he must have done, and sleep next to her every night. The third folder nearly broke me. Credit cards, Maddie's accounts. Except I'd never opened these accounts, never seen these cards, but there was my name, my social security number, my forged signature on application after application. 15 different cards, all maxed out, total balance, $96,000. He'd stolen my identity. My husband, the man who'd held my hand through childbirth and my mother's funeral and our daughter's wedding, had committed fraud using my name. He'd turned me into a criminal without my knowledge. He'd destroyed my credit, my financial security, my future, all while kissing my forehead and telling me not to worry. I sat there for a long time, just breathing, in out, trying to anchor myself to something real. The chair was hard beneath me. The air smelled like metal and old paper. My hands were still shaking, but something else was happening too. The shock was burning away, and what was left underneath was something colder, clearer, sharper. At the bottom of the box was an envelope, thick, cream-colored, expensive paper, my name written in Bob's handwriting on the front. Just Maggie, not Dear Maggie or To My Wife, just my name. I opened it with steady hands now. The grief, the shock, all of it had burned away. What was left was rage. Pure, clean, focused rage. The letter was 2 pages long. Maggie, if you're reading this, I'm already gone, and you found the box. I'm sorry. That's inadequate. I know, but it's all I have. 5 years ago, I made an investment I was sure would pay off. A tech startup. The founder was brilliant, the product was revolutionary, and I was going to triple our retirement fund. It didn't just fail, it crashed spectacularly. I lost everything I'd put in, $150,000. I tried to fix it. Every Tuesday I went to the bank trying to restructure, trying to find a way out, but I just dug us deeper. The house loans, the credit cards in your name. I did it to buy time. I thought I could fix it before you ever had to know. I thought if I could just make one good investment, one smart play, I could recover everything, and you'd never have to know how close we came to losing it all. I was wrong. By the time you read this, we're probably bankrupt. The house will likely go into foreclosure. Your credit is destroyed. I know you'll hate me. You should. I was trying to protect you from my mistakes, but all I did was make you pay for them. I'm sorry. I love you. That part was always real. Bob. I folded the letter, placed it back in the envelope, and put everything back in the box. Then I walked out of that room with my spine straight and my jaw set. Patricia was waiting outside, her professional smile slipping when she saw my face. "Are you all right, Mrs. Thompson?" "No," I said honestly, "but I will be. I need copies of everything in that box, and I need the name of a good lawyer who handles financial fraud." Her eyes widened slightly. "I'll make the copies myself, and Mrs. Thompson, I'm truly sorry." "So am I," said, "but sorry doesn't pay the bills." By the time I got home, David's car was already in the driveway. He met me at the door, his face tight with worry. "Mom, I found something else. Dad's life insurance policy." "Don't tell me," I said, setting my purse down with more force than necessary. "There isn't one." He blinked. "How did you know?" "Because your father spent the last 5 years destroying everything we built, and apparently he was very thorough about it." I walked past him into the kitchen, pulled out the copies from the bank, and spread them across the table. The same table where we'd eaten dinner as a family for decades. The same table where Bob had done his taxes every year, always so organized, always so in control. "Sit down," I said. "We have work to do." David read through everything. His face went pale, then red, then pale again. When he finished, he looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "Mom, this is bad. This is really, really bad." "I know. The house, your retirement, your credit, everything is gone." "I know. How are you so calm?" I sat down across from him and folded my hands on the table, the same way I'd folded them 1,000 times before while Bob sat across from me explaining why we couldn't afford something I wanted or why we needed to be more careful with spending. All those times he'd been lecturing me about being frugal while he was hemorrhaging money in secret accounts. "Because anger is useless right now," I said. "What I need is a plan." The lawyer's name was Jennifer Rodriguez. Patricia from the bank had recommended her specifically for cases like mine. We met in her office the following Monday, a bright space with windows overlooking downtown Portland. The view was beautiful, mountains in the distance, the city spread out below, but I couldn't appreciate it. I was too focused on the folder in my lap, the one containing proof that my marriage had been a lie. Jennifer was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that I immediately appreciated. She didn't offer me the sympathetic head tilt that everyone else had been giving me. She just gestured to a chair and said, "Tell me everything." So I did. I walked her through the whole thing without interrupting myself or breaking down. The safe deposit box, the loans, the credit cards, the forged signatures, Bob's letter admitting to all of it. I laid out the documents one by one, organizing them the way Bob would have, with a bitter irony that wasn't lost on me. When I finished, Jennifer sat back in her chair and was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to be direct with you. This is one of the worst cases of spousal financial abuse I've seen, and I've seen many. The word hung in the air between us. Abuse. Your husband systematically destroyed your financial security and did it in your name. That's not just mismanagement, that's fraud. It's identity theft. It's a crime. But he's dead," I said. "What can we do?" "We can prove you weren't complicit. We can work with the creditors to show the signatures were forged. We can potentially save the house by demonstrating the loans were fraudulent. But it's going to be a fight." "How long?" 6 months, maybe a year, and it's going to cost money you probably don't have." I thought about the $43 in our checking account, about the empty retirement funds, about the pile of debt with my name on it. Then I thought about Bob's letter, about his careful handwriting, about 38 years of, "Don't worry, Maggie, I've got it covered. I'll find the money," I said. "Tell me what we need to do." That night, Emily called. My daughter had always been closer to her father than to me. They'd had that special bond. She was his little girl, even at 35 years old. When I told her what I'd found, the silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "Mom," she finally said, her voice small and uncertain. "Are you sure? Maybe there's an explanation. Maybe." "I have the documents, Emily. I have his letter admitting to it. But Dad wouldn't do that. He loved you. He loved us." "He did," I said, and I meant it. "And he also stole my identity and destroyed our financial future. Both things can be true." "I don't. I can't." Her voice cracked. "You're speaking badly about him. He just died, Mom. Can't you just let him rest in peace?" "He's resting in peace," I said quietly. "I'm the one who has to live with what he did." She hung up shortly after. Not abruptly, not angrily, just a quiet, "I have to go," and then the line went dead. David called me an hour later. Emily called me crying. She says you're wrong, that you're letting grief make you irrational, that Dad would never. "Did you see the documents?" "Yes, but..." "Did you see his letter?" "Yes." "Then you know I'm not wrong. There was a long pause. Then David said, "She'll come around. Give her time." But I wasn't sure, because I'd seen this before in other contexts, with other families. The person who refuses to believe, the one who needs the lie to be true because the truth would shatter something fundamental in them. Emily had always idealized her father. She'd been the princess to his king. How do you tell a princess that the king was actually a thief? The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and phone calls and meetings that all blended together. Jennifer filed reports with the credit bureaus. We contacted the credit card companies one by one. We gathered evidence of the forged signatures, my real signature versus the ones on the applications. They weren't even good forgeries. Bob had been sloppy, rushed, desperate. We hired a handwriting expert who confirmed what I already knew. I hadn't signed those applications. David threw himself into helping me. He organized files, made spreadsheets, attended meetings. He took time off work, telling his firm he had a family emergency. His wife, Sarah, brought me meals and sat with me when the silence got too loud. She didn't try to make small talk or cheer me up. She just sat there, a quiet presence that said, "I'm here," without needing words. One evening, as we sat at the kitchen table going through another stack of documents, David looked up at me. His eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "Mom, I need to tell you something." I set down my pen. "Okay." He took a breath. "A few years ago, maybe 3, maybe 4, Dad asked me to invest in something with him. A tech startup. He said it was a sure thing that we'd make a fortune. I had $50,000 saved for the kids' college fund. He wanted me to put it all in. My heart sank. "David, please tell me you didn't." I almost did. I was ready to do it. But Sarah, he glanced toward the living room where his wife was reading to their daughter. Sarah didn't trust it. She said if it was such a sure thing, why did Dad need our money? Why wasn't he using his own retirement funds? We fought about it. I was so angry at her. I told her she was being paranoid, that she didn't trust my father, but she held firm. She said she'd rather I resent her than lose our children's future. He looked at me with haunted eyes. I told Dad no. And Mom, I think he was already in trouble then. I think he was trying to use my money to fix his mistakes, and if I'd said yes, you'd have lost everything too. Sarah saved us. His voice broke. She saved us, and I almost threw it away because I trusted him more than I trusted her. I reached across the table and took his hand. But you didn't. That's what matters. Do you think he would have kept going, taking from other people? I thought about the letter, about Bob's words, about how drowning people grab onto anything they can reach. I think he was desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. 3 months after Bob's death, we had our first victory. 2 of the credit card companies agreed the signatures were forged and removed the debt from my credit report. It wasn't much, maybe $20,000 out of $96,000, but it was something. Proof that the truth could win, even if slowly, even if painfully. Emily still wasn't speaking to me. She'd sent a short email. "I need space. I can't handle the way you're destroying Dad's memory. When you're ready to remember him as he really was, let me know." I'd read that email a dozen times, trying to find the right response, but there was no right response, because I was remembering him as he really was. That was the whole problem. The fight for the home equity loans was harder, much harder. The bank argued that as Bob's spouse, I'd benefited from the money, even if I hadn't signed the papers, even if I'd never seen a single dollar of it. Jennifer countered that I could prove I'd never seen the funds. They'd gone into accounts solely in Bob's name, spent on investments that failed before I knew they existed. "We're going to have to go to court," Jennifer said during one of our meetings. Her office had become familiar to me by now, almost comfortable. "A judge will have to decide if you're liable for debt created through fraud, even though you were married to the person who committed it. Will we win?" She hesitated, and I appreciated her honesty more than any false reassurance. "I think so, but I can't guarantee it. This is complicated legal territory. Spousal liability laws vary, and we're essentially arguing that your marriage doesn't make you responsible for crimes committed in your name. The court date was set for late November, 6 months after Bob's death. In the weeks leading up to it, I did something I hadn't done in years. I looked for a job. At 67, I wasn't exactly a hot commodity. I'd been a stay-at-home mom for most of my adult life, going back to part-time work as a librarian only after the kids were grown. I'd retired 3 years ago, looking forward to travel and grandchildren and the quiet years I'd earned. Instead, I was applying for positions at bookstores and cafes, anywhere that would hire someone who needed to rebuild from nothing. A small independent bookstore downtown called me for an interview. The owner, a woman named Ruth, was probably 70, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind red-framed glasses. She looked over my sparse resume with an expression I couldn't quite read. "So," she said finally, "you worked as a librarian. You've been married for nearly 4 decades, and now you're looking for work. May I ask why?" I could have lied, could have made something up about boredom or wanting to stay active, but I was tired of lies, even kind ones. "My husband died 6 months ago," I said. "I just found out he stole my identity and destroyed our finances. I need a job because I'm trying to avoid losing my house." Ruth set down the resume and looked at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, not a sympathetic smile, but something harder, more knowing. "When can you start?" I worked at Ruth's bookstore 3 days a week. The pay wasn't much, but it was something. More importantly, it gave me a place to go, a purpose that wasn't just survival. I liked recommending books to customers, organizing the shelves, the smell of paper and coffee. It felt real in a way nothing else had for months. Ruth and I became friends. One slow afternoon, while we were restocking the mystery section, she told me about her own marriage, which had ended in divorce 30 years ago. "He wasn't dishonest about money," she said, her hands moving efficiently along the shelves. "He was just dishonest about everything else. Other women, other lives, other versions of himself. When I finally left, everyone told me I was overreacting, that all marriages had problems, that I should try harder." She looked at me. "But you know what I learned? The people who tell you to try harder are usually the ones who've never had to try at all." The court hearing was on a Thursday, cold and damp with the threat of rain. David came with me, taking another day off work. Emily didn't. She'd sent a text the night before. "I can't watch you do this to Dad's name." "I'm sorry." I'd replied. "I understand. I love you." She hadn't written back. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, not like the dramatic spaces you see on TV. The judge, a man in his 60s named Harrison, listened to both sides present their arguments. The bank's lawyer argued that I was Bob's spouse, that I'd lived in the house, that I'd benefited from the marriage even if I hadn't directly benefited from the loans. Jennifer stood and, in a calm, clear voice, destroyed that argument piece by piece. She showed the forged signatures, the expert testimony, the separate accounts, the pattern of deception spanning 5 years. She showed Bob's letter, his own admission of fraud. Then she called me to the stand. "Mrs. Thompson," she said, "when did you first learn about these loans?" "When I opened the safe deposit box after my husband's death." "In 38 years of marriage, did your husband ever discuss taking out equity loans on your home?" "Never." "Did you receive any of the money from those loans?" "No. It went into accounts I didn't know existed." "Did you sign the loan applications?" "No, I did not." The bank's lawyer stood for cross-examination. He was young, probably in his 30s, with the polished aggression of someone who'd never really lost anything important. "Mrs. Thompson, isn't it true that you trusted your husband with the finances?" "Yes." "So you chose not to be involved in financial decisions." I met his eyes. "I trusted him." "That's not the same as choosing to be defrauded." "But you benefited from the marriage. You lived in the house those loans were taken against." "I lived in my home, yes. the one my husband and I bought together 40 years ago, the one he put at risk without my knowledge or consent. You expect us to believe that in 38 years you never suspected anything? That was the question, wasn't it? The one I'd been asking myself for 6 months. I took a breath. My husband was an accountant. He was good with numbers, organized, trustworthy, or so I thought. He hid his mistakes behind competence, behind my trust, behind 38 years of me believing that love meant not questioning, not doubting, not looking too closely at the things he told me not to worry about. I paused, looking directly at the young lawyer. Was I naive? Probably, but naivety isn't consent to fraud. The judge called a recess. We waited in the hallway, David pacing, Jennifer checking her phone, me sitting perfectly still on a wooden bench. I wasn't thinking about my testimony. I was thinking about Emily, about the daughter who couldn't accept what her father had done, who needed the lie more than she needed the truth. After an hour, we were called back in. The judge looked at both lawyers, then at me. I've reviewed all the evidence, the forged signatures, the expert testimony, the defendant's own written admission. While I understand the bank's position regarding spousal benefit, I cannot ignore the clear evidence of fraud committed without Mrs. Thompson's knowledge or consent. He paused. I'm ruling in favor of the defendant. The loans are void. The liens on the property are released. David grabbed my hand. Jennifer smiled, and I felt something that had been clenched tight in my chest for 6 months finally release. We'd won. But walking out of that courthouse, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired and older and strangely empty. Because what had I won? Really? My house, yes. My name cleared, yes. But I'd also lost a marriage I thought I understood, a partner I thought I knew, and maybe a daughter who couldn't forgive me for telling the truth. That night, Emily called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom. Her voice was thick, like she'd been crying. I need to tell you something. Okay. After the hearing today, I went to the bank. I asked to see Dad's records, the ones you showed the lawyer. I wanted to prove you wrong. She took a shaky breath. But you weren't wrong. It was all there, everything you said. And there was more. My heart sank. More? He had a credit card in my name, too. I never opened it. Never saw it, but it's there. $23,000. My credit is ruined, and I never even knew. Oh, Bob. Even from the grave, his secrets kept spilling out. Emily, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have listened. I couldn't imagine Dad doing that. He was my dad. He taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework and walked me down the aisle. How could that person also be this person? Both people were real, I said softly. The good father and the man who made terrible choices. People aren't just one thing. She was quiet for a moment. Can I come over? Of course. Any time. An hour later, my daughter sat at my kitchen table, and I made us tea, and we talked, really talked, about her father, about the debt, about how love and betrayal can exist in the same person, how sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest, not because they're monsters, but because they're human and flawed and desperate. Jennifer helped Emily file the same fraud claims I had, and slowly, painfully, we began to rebuild. All three of us together, me, David, Emily, sitting in my living room going through documents, making plans, moving forward. We'll get through this, David said one evening, and I believed him. Not because it would be easy, but because we were finally telling the truth, finally seeing clearly, finally not pretending that silence meant peace. The bookstore became my sanctuary. Ruth taught me about running a small business, about inventory and ordering, and the quiet satisfaction of matching the right book to the right reader. One day, a woman came in looking lost. "Can I help you?" I asked. She hesitated. "Do you have anything about financial abuse in marriage?" I walked her to the self-help section, pulled down 3 books, and then on impulse said, "I have experience with this if you want to talk." We talked for an hour. Her story was different from mine, but the pattern was the same. Control disguised as care, isolation disguised as protection, manipulation disguised as love. When she left, she hugged me. "Thank you for believing me." After she left, Ruth looked at me. "You're good at that." "At what?" "Listening, believing, not judging." I thought about Emily's initial reaction, about the friends who'd pulled away when I started talking about Bob's fraud, uncomfortable with the messiness of it. "I know what it's like not to be believed," I said simply. Over the next few months, more women came to the bookstore. Word had somehow spread that there was someone there who understood, who'd been through it, who could point them toward resources and lawyers and the truth that they weren't crazy, they weren't imagining it, they weren't alone. Ruth and I started a small support group that met once a month in the back room. Just a circle of chairs and coffee and women telling their stories. Financial abuse, emotional abuse, the quiet kind that doesn't leave bruises but leaves you hollow. I shared my story at the first meeting. All of it, the Tuesday bank trips, the safe deposit box, the forged signatures, the court battle, the daughter who initially didn't believe me, the slow, painful reconstruction of a life I thought I'd had figured out. "How did you stay strong?" someone asked. I didn't, I said honestly. I cried. I was angry. I was terrified. But I kept moving forward anyway, because the alternative was giving up, and I'd spent too many years letting someone else make my choices. The group grew. 10 women, then 15, then 20. We shared resources, phone numbers for lawyers, tips for rebuilding credit, strategies for dealing with family members who didn't understand. One evening, after a particularly good meeting, Ruth and I sat in the empty bookstore drinking wine from paper cups. "You know what you're doing, right?" she said. "Running a support group, building a legacy. Bob tried to destroy you, to leave you with nothing. Instead, you're helping other women avoid the same fate. You're taking what hurt you and using it to help others." She raised her cup. "That's not just survival, that's transformation." I thought about that word, transformation. I'd spent so much energy trying to get back to who I was before, trying to reclaim the life Bob had stolen. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the point was to become someone new, someone forged in the fire of betrayal and loss and the hard work of rebuilding. A year after Bob's death, I stood in the bookstore at our support group's anniversary meeting. 23 women in a circle. Some I knew well, others were new. All of us connected by the common thread of having trusted someone who broke that trust. When my husband died, I said, I thought my life was over. In a way, it was. The life I thought I had, the marriage I believed in, the future I'd planned, all of it died with him. But something else was born. Not immediately, not easily, but gradually. I looked around the circle. What he did to me was wrong. Legally, morally, ethically wrong, and I won't pretend otherwise. But what I did next, that was my choice. I could have stayed angry, stayed a victim, stayed stuck in the betrayal. Instead, I chose to move forward, to rebuild, to help others, to transform pain into purpose. After the meeting, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 35, her eyes red from crying. "My husband handles all our money," she said. "He says I'm not good with numbers, that I should just let him take care of it. But something feels wrong. I don't know what just wrong." I took her hands. "Trust that feeling. Ask questions. Look at the accounts. Don't let anyone, not even someone you love, keep you in the dark about your own financial life." She nodded, crying harder. "What if I'm wrong? What if I'm just being paranoid?" Then you look foolish for 5 minutes and then you move on, secure in the knowledge that you were protecting yourself. On what would have been my 39th wedding anniversary, I went to the bank. Not First National where the safe deposit box had been, but a different bank, one Bob had never walked into. I opened an account in my name only, just my name, and deposited my paycheck from the bookstore. Modest, but mine. The teller smiled at me. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mrs. Thompson?" "Actually," I said, "I'd like to change the name on the account. Not Thompson, my maiden name, Margaret Sullivan, because that's who I'd been before Bob, before the marriage, before the 38 years of trust that turned to ash, and that's who I was going to be moving forward, not erasing the past, but reclaiming the parts of myself I'd set aside. I walked out of that bank with my head high, and for the first time in a year, I felt like I knew exactly who I was. If you're reading this, if any of this sounds familiar, the locked doors, the secrets, the feeling that something's wrong, but you can't quite name it, trust yourself. Ask questions. Look at the documents. Don't let anyone tell you that love means blind trust, because it doesn't. Love means partnership, transparency, respect. And if you find out you've been betrayed, if you open that safe deposit box and your world falls apart, remember this: you are stronger than you know. The person who tried to erase you didn't succeed. You're still here, and that means you can rebuild. I did. 2 years have passed since I found that safe deposit box. 2 years since my world imploded, and I had to piece it back together with my own 2 hands. The house is still mine. Paid off now, finally, after selling Bob's vintage car collection that I found in a storage unit I didn't know we had. Turns out he'd been hiding assets too, not just debts. The irony wasn't lost on me. Emily is doing well. Her credit is restored, and she's dating someone new, a financial advisor, of all things. She jokes that she has a type, but this one insists on complete transparency. She shows me their shared budget spreadsheet with something like pride. "I know where every dollar goes now, Mom," she told me last week, "and it feels good." David and Sarah had another baby, a girl. They named her Margaret, after the strongest woman we know, David said when they told me. I cried, but they were good tears this time. The support group now meets twice a month. We've had over 60 women come through our doors. Some stay for months. Some just need one meeting to find their courage. Ruth handed me the keys to the bookstore last month. "It's yours now," she said. "I'm retiring for real this time, and this place needs you more than it needs me." Not making secret transactions or hiding debts, but in the back room, available for any woman who walks in needing to talk, needing to be believed, needing to know that survival is possible. I've reclaimed Tuesdays. They're mine now. Last month, I got a letter from the bank, a different bank, the one where I opened my account as Margaret Sullivan. They were offering me a position on their community advisory board, specifically focused on protecting customers from financial fraud. "Your experience and advocacy work has caught our attention," the letter said. I accepted. Bob's grave is 10 minutes from my house. I've been there exactly twice, once for the funeral and once 6 months ago on what would have been his 67th birthday. I didn't bring flowers. I brought a printed copy of my credit report, fully cleared, score above 750, and a photo of the support group. I set them on the headstone and I said, out loud, "You tried to bury me, but I grew roots instead." Then I walked away and I haven't been back since. I don't hate Bob anymore. I've moved past that. Hate takes energy, and I need all my energy for living. But I don't forgive him either. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. Understanding isn't the same as excusing, and moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. What Bob did was unforgivable, but what I did next, that's the story that matters. I survived. I rebuilt. I transformed. And now I help others do the same. Sometimes late at night when the bookstore is closed and I'm doing the accounts I understand now, accounts I control, I think about that version of Maggie who stood in the grocery store squeezing avocados while her world fell apart. The one who trusted blindly, who never asked questions, who believed that love meant never doubting. She's gone now. She had to die so Margaret could live. And you know what? I don't miss her at all. My name is Margaret Sullivan. I'm 67 years old. I own a bookstore. I run a support group. I serve on a bank's advisory board. I have 2 children who respect me, 4 grandchildren who adore me, and a life that is entirely, completely, unapologetically mine. Bob took a lot from me, but he didn't take everything. And what he left behind, I turned it into something he never could have imagined. I turned it into freedom.